The New York Knicks lose to the Minnesota Timberwolves 117-100 on Monday night. And we're here to talk to our New York Post writer, Brian Fonseca. Brian, how you doing, man?
Happy to be here, as always.
Appreciate you always doing this for me, man. And I want to talk about this game a little bit. The Knicks, surprisingly, we talked about this a little bit before we came on this video, but they out-rebounded the Timberwolves tonight, 50-44, which is surprising when you think about how much size the Timberwolves have compared to the Knicks. You really just have Mitchell Robinson and a bunch of forwards. But, can you break down this game for me, how the Knicks, they just weren't able to put up enough points tonight against the Timberwolves?
Yeah, everyone but Jalen Brunson seemingly had a good game, right? That's kind of the theme. Or I suppose Mitchell Robinson. I mean, he was battling. Part of the reason that they out-rebounded the Timberwolves was Mitchell Robinson got busy on the glass, had another double-double, had 11 rebounds. But Quentin Grimes gave you a donut from the field. And didn't score at all. And ultimately, an inefficient shooting performance from Julius Randle, inefficient shooting performance from Emmanuel Quickly off the bench, which is a little bit concerning because he's had quite a few of those this season. And then RJ Barrett, who obviously just came back from the migraine, still working his way back. But at the same time, he historically has had some of these inefficient, 4 for 13 type of performances. So ultimately, you want some more consistency around Jalen Brunson. And that's sort of the position you find yourselves in. Now, to the Knicks, sort of defense, Minnesota has proven to be a good regular season team so far. I'm skeptical as to whether or not this would mean anything past April, but they're 6-0 at home now. They're 10-3. They have wins over Denver and Boston. They have a win over Miami, though Jimmy Butler didn't play. They have 2 wins over the Warriors in Golden State. One of them was with Steph Curry. So they have some quality wins. Against 6-0 at home, 10-3, and proven to be maybe the best defensive team in the NBA so far early on the season. So we'll give the Knicks some grace there, and they are coming off a 3-game winning streak, albeit against a couple of bad teams, but they also beat the Atlanta Hawks, who, has been pretty solid to start the season. So ultimately, I think you could just chalk it up to tough shooting performance against a team that's been very strong defensively, even though Jaden McDaniels is the key to that and got hurt very early in the game. But I think the Knicks, this is one of those nights of 82 where you just can't really find the rim outside of Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, you bring up a great point about Quickly, Randall not having good shooting nights, but I think we've talked about this with this team a little bit. It's the big three. If you're not getting good nights from all the big three of Brunson, Randall, and Barrett, your team's just not going to win because it doesn't seem like the Knicks have enough coming off the bench. Hartenstein, Quickly, he has his nights where he goes off, but it just is, and DiVincenzo, it's just not enough scoring for this team off the bench, it feels like.
And the weird thing about it is coming into the season, you thought, hey, this is like a sneaky deep team. They signed Dante DiVincenzo, and that, is going to be a critical bench piece for them. Josh Hart, who was starting in RJ Barrett's absence, is one of the main guys that comes off the bench. Neither of those guys are really scorers, but they can do a lot of dirty work stuff. They have these intangibles, like they have things that translate to winning basketball. Ultimately, can they put the ball in the hoop? Emmanuel Quickly is supposed to be the guy that does that. He hasn't been as consistent this season yet.
Right.
That is something that's very, important to watch because Emmanuel Quickly is playing for a contract extension. We don't know if he's going to get one. He hasn't to this point. That's very important. And then outside of that, on their bench, like Isaiah Hartenstein is not somebody who's going to fill it up necessarily. Quentin Grimes started today. If he's going to be on the bench at any point this year, he's probably not giving you a ton of production either from a scoring standpoint. So sort of manufacturing those points off the bench. This is where Derrick Rose was helpful before they stopped playing him when he was on the roster at one point. And Emmanuel Quickly ended up sort of carrying that mantle. But to get consistent offense around Jalen Brunson has been a big challenge for this team. RJ Barrett, Julius Randle are not the most consistent sort of guys. And this has been the theme going on so far. And I don't want to make it seem like, everything's all bad. This is a team that's over 500. They're 8-6 to start the season. They've been, they've gotten some good wins so far. But at the same time, if they're going to not be stagnant and reach that next step, yes, they're going to need, among other things, some offensive consistency.
100%, Brian. My final thing I want to talk to you about is Karl-Anthony Towns. Been rumored the Knicks are interested in trading for him. For you, thinking about this team, is that the guy that you really want to get? Because that's, that everyone says the Knicks are one big player, one big piece away from being that elite contender with the Bostons of the world. Is Karl Anthony Towns going to take him over the top? Is that a guy we're going to see at the trade deadline ending up being back home for him, specifically as a New Yorker, back at playing with the Knicks?
The Knicks find themselves in a very interesting place because financially, they can stomach the Karl Anthony Towns contract. Now, I don't know if you would want to, but there's $49.7 million coming his way next year as the beginning of a new extension that was agreed upon prior that will end with him getting, if he agrees to a player option, which he probably should, $61 million in 2027, 2028, where he'll be into his 30s. Now, probably not a contract that's going to age well. But the Knicks find themselves in a unique position financially because they're a good team, a playoff team that has no max contracts. You're able to do this if you want. Now, is that the sort of upgrade you're looking for? And if so, Julius Randle is likely the sort of cornerstone piece out the door. I think that they would try to keep RJ Barrett in that. I'm not sure how much sense RJ Barrett would make with Anthony Edwards anyway. And I assume it'll be some combination of Julius Randle, Emmanuel quickly. You get some other salary filler, but those two pieces and some draft picks. Is Karl Anthony Towns worth all that? I feel like the Knicks can just at least be patient up until January, February, see where they're at. If they want to go in that direction, you ultimately have to see what happens at the top of the Eastern Conference, that being sort of the Celtics. We'll see what the Bucks do. We'll see where the Sixers are. We'll see where the Miami Heat are. And the Knicks are right, sneaking up behind them. If they feel like they can make a push, and if we're talking about them, Ryan, later on, where it's like, hey, they're 8 games above 500, and the trade deadline's coming up, and Boston's not looking as strong as they would. Their depth is a little bit in question. Milwaukee hasn't totally figured it out. Miami, we don't really know. And Philadelphia's kind of tailed off after a strong start. Then that's something that the Knicks could look at, right? Is Karl Anthony Towns that piece is sort of my question. And I don't know if that's going to be the case. There's been questions about his character that I won't sort of allude to here. But I will say that if people have had questions about him, putting him in New York City is going to be an interesting challenge. But I do think he's a very good player who can work with Mitchell Robinson if he's not part of the deal, could work with, and RJ Barrett could work with Jalen Brunson in particular, who's really the cornerstone you got to worry about here. But is he really the upgrade from Julius Randle that we think he is my question? Or should the Knicks hold out because they have a lot of draft capital, hold out for something better down the line where they don't need to rush their timeline?
Yeah, it feels like for me, though, Mitchell Robinson might be a piece that'd be going back in a trade like that. Cause, do you need 2 centers like that? I mean, I know Karl Anthony Towns is a big that can score a lot more efficiently than Mitchell Robinson, obviously, but it'd be interesting to see.
Minnesota has Rudy Gobert, so Mitchell Robinson would probably have to go to another team if that's the case. I'm sure Minnesota would probably want off that Rudy Gobert contract at some point, but he's been.
You ain't kidding. You ain't kidding. That trade has not aged well at all. And obviously Tom Thibodeau is the one's got to sign off on the cat trade,
Yeah. And he's coached them already. So he doesn't sign off on that. You know all you need to. But if he does, then you sort of roll with Tom Thibodeau there. Like, hey, if he feels like he can make it work, then you would defer to him. Although I have a feeling he'd much rather prefer other players from that Minnesota team, one being in Miami that he probably won't get a chance to reunite with.
Brian, I appreciate you as always breaking this all down for us, man.
Absolutely. Anytime.